Richmond, Virginia. Late September, 1849. A man named Edgar Poe was preparing for a journey. He was to travel north, first to Philadelphia, then to New York, to edit a collection of poems and secure a literary journal. A simple enough errand for a writer of his stature. He had been staying at the home of his fiancée, Elmira Shelton, a widow he had known since childhood. Accounts from this period describe him as being in good spirits, clear-headed, even optimistic. He spoke of his future, of settling debts, of the marriage that lay ahead. On the 27th of September, he bade farewell to Elmira and boarded a steamer bound for Baltimore. From there, he would take a train to Philadelphia. A brief stop in Baltimore was planned, perhaps to visit friends, perhaps to simply change transport. The details of these initial moments are prosaic, mundane, the last ordinary acts of a man whose life was about to plunge into an abyss of the unexplained. The ship departed, the river flowed, and the fog began to gather on the distant horizon. What happened immediately after he stepped off that steamer in Baltimore remains a void, a blank space in history. Weeks passed. The planned meetings in Philadelphia never occurred. His friends in New York heard nothing. A growing unease began to settle over those who knew him. Then, on October 3rd, a discovery was made. A printer named Joseph W. Walker was making his way to Gunners Hall, a public house on East Lombard Street, which was serving as a polling place for local elections. Lying in the street, near the entrance, was a man, disheveled, unconscious, barely alive. Walker recognized him instantly, despite his deplorable state. It was Edgar Allan Poe. He was wearing clothes that were clearly not his own, ill-fitting, cheap and stained, a stark contrast to the refined attire he was known for. Poe was moaning, muttering incoherently, and shivering uncontrollably. Walker, alarmed, sent a note to Dr. Joseph E. Snodgrass, a physician and editor who knew Poe. The message was terse. There is a man, rather the worse for wear, at Ryan's 4th Ward polls, who goes by the name of Edgar A. Poe, and who, I think, is a sufferer from cooping. Dr. Snodgrass arrived, confirming Walker's grim identification. Poe was in a state of semi-consciousness, his body trembling, his eyes vacant and rolling. He was immediately transported to Washington College Hospital. There, under the care of Dr. John J. Moran, the resident physician, Poe spent his final days. Dr. Moran would later recount the harrowing ordeal. Poe was delirious, gripped by intense hallucinations. He thrashed in his bed, screaming at imaginary figures, whispering to specters that only he could see. He called out for a Reynolds, a name no one present recognized, a figure that seemed to haunt his every waking, fading moment. He was never coherent enough to explain what had happened to him. He repeatedly demanded to be left alone, to be allowed to die in peace. There were periods of lucidity, fleeting windows in the storm, when he would apologize for his behavior, only to descend once more into a terrifying spiral of madness and fear. His condition worsened rapidly. The mystery of Poe's condition was compounded by several unsettling details. Firstly, the clothes. As Walker noted, they were not his own. But further, accounts suggest he was found in different clothes each time he was seen in the days leading up to his discovery, a fact that, if true, beggars belief. How did he acquire multiple sets of cheap, ill-fitting garments? Where were his own clothes, the respectable travel attire he had worn when he left Richmond? Secondly, his physical state. While some medical professionals at the time attributed his delirium to acute alcohol poisoning, Dr. Moran later insisted Poe showed no signs of alcohol on his breath, only profound exhaustion and a feverish delirium. Yet, the initial message from Walker directly referenced cooping, a brutal election day practice where unsuspecting victims were drugged, forced to vote for a particular candidate multiple times under different disguises, then left for dead. The timing of Poe's discovery, on Election Day in Baltimore, lent chilling credence to this theory. Over the decades, numerous theories have been advanced to explain Poe's mysterious demise, each with its own proponents and detractors. The most popular, and perhaps most tragic, is the idea of alcohol poisoning. Poe had a known struggle with alcohol, though contemporary accounts suggest he had periods of sobriety. Yet, if he was sober, why the delirium? If he relapsed, why no smell of alcohol? Another pervasive theory is cooping. This practice involved kidnapping individuals, often transients or drunks, force-feeding them liquor and drugs, then dressing them in different outfits and driving them to various polling places to cast fraudulent ballots. Once their usefulness was exhausted, they were sometimes beaten or abandoned. Poe's condition and the election day timing fit the pattern eerily well. Other theories range from a brain lesion or tumor, which could explain the hallucinations and delirium, to rabies, a disease that causes hydrophobia and extreme agitation, symptoms consistent with some descriptions of Poe's final hours. Even carbon monoxide poisoning has been suggested, given the primitive heating systems of the era, though this offers no explanation for his change of clothes or his location. On October 7, 1849, at 5 a.m., Edgar Allan Poe died in Washington College Hospital. His last words, according to Dr. Moran, were a chilling whisper: "Lord, help my poor soul." No official death certificate was issued. No autopsy was performed. His death was swiftly announced, attributed vaguely to congestion of the brain or brain fever, common euphemisms of the era for deaths without clear cause. He was buried unceremoniously in the city, without the presence of his fiancée or many of his literary peers, a stark and lonely end for a man who had captivated imaginations with tales of terror and the unknown. To this day, the true cause of Edgar Allan Poe's death remains one of literature's most enduring and unsettling mysteries. Was he a victim of the brutal underworld of election rigging? Did a hidden disease silently consume him? Or was he simply lost to his own demons, manifesting in a final, terrifying delirium? We are left with fragments: a man found in strange clothes, incoherent ramblings, a whispered, unrecognized name. The fog over those final days has never lifted, and the questions still linger, echoing in the dark.